Well, welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, the show where we decode the brilliance of world-class communicators and reveal the science behind messages that move people to action. Today, we're diving into a question that separates the average from the extraordinary. What do the best leaders do to make their ideas land harder, stick longer, and scale faster than the rest? And it's not just what they know, it's how they transform what they know into influence. And who better to help us unpack this than my guest today, Carmine Gallo, a best-selling author of books such as Talk Like TED, The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs, The Bezos Blueprint, and 5 Stars. Carmine has spent years studying the greatest communicators of our time, and today he's sharing the tools, techniques, and storytelling secrets that turn good leaders into unforgettable ones. So from sticky triads and metaphor-driven writing, this episode is packed with powerful lessons that you can use to lead and communicate with clarity, charisma, and conviction. Let's get started. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. Well, and you have a great framework called the message map. That's a simple yet powerful tool that allows you to keep your messages sharp, shareable, and unforgettable. So that's one headline, 3 core messages, and each of those core messages is supported by a story, stat, or an example. And if more leaders were to follow this template, their presentations would be a lot more engaging.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I call it a message map. Other people have kind of come up with something a little different in terms of how you explain it, but it is I've been teaching it for years, and it really is one of the simplest ways to outline a presentation or even outline a conversation that you're going to have, a mission critical conversation, a meeting. Start with the big picture, supported by 3 supporting points. Big picture, 3s. Okay, so let's talk about this though, because there's logic behind everything. Big picture. Again, I've learned through neuroscience that people gravitate to big picture before the details. That's the problem with most educators today. That's the problem with bad presentations, ones that bore you to death. It's because people start in the weeds. We've all heard that. You're starting in the weeds. You know too much, the curse of knowledge. So I always recommend big picture. Don't be afraid of going back to the big picture, because people need to see the big picture before the details. And that too is established in the neuroscience literature. So I was thinking about this the other day. There's a website that I've been using. I know the founders, Canva. I bet a lot of your listeners know about Canva online design. Well, the original pitch for Canva, I don't think she thought about it as a message map, but it came across that way, was big picture first. What is Canva? So if you were to ask the normal person, what is Canva? Oh, it's this tool that I've been using. It allows me to create like these PDFs or marketing material. Well, wait, I'm already lost. What is it? You got to have the big picture first. Canva democratizes design. Oh, okay. It's a democratizing design, making graphics or design accessible to anybody. You don't even have to be a designer. Okay. All right. So that's kind of like big picture. Even though I don't have very many details, now you can support it with the details. So the details could be 3, by the way, 3, because we all know that the human brain and short-term memory can only keep about 3 pieces of information. It's going to forget everything else. So try to stick to 3, 4 maybe, but 3 is good. Big picture, 3. Canva democratizes design, makes it accessible and easy for anyone to be a great designer. How do we do that? It's an online tool and a mobile app that carries all of these features and functions. Then you can kind of go into it. Now, again, I'm not speaking from actually having written down the pitch. I was just thinking about this out loud. But in order for you to communicate anything, the sub point is not, the big picture is not that Canva is accessible by a mobile app or on desktop. That's not the big picture, but it's important, because it tells me that, okay, this democratizes design. It allows me to be a great designer. How? Well, you can access it through either mobile or desktop. Here's how to do it. Okay, great. And now I'm starting to get it. Once you're in Canva, you can do all of these cool things with design. You can create photos. You could do this. You could do that. Okay, so maybe that's the second point. All the cool creative things you could do. And maybe the third point would be there's a free version and a subscription version. Okay. So again, the reason why I'm kind of thinking through this out loud, Charles, because it's an exercise. No matter what you come up with as a message map, it's not going to be perfect. And that's okay. You don't have to wordsmith it just yet. But just think to yourself, okay, I've got a presentation on this particular product or my idea or my initiative. Big picture. What is the one big, most important theme or topic I want people to understand and take away? And then how am I going to support it? If a supporting point is more important than the big picture, then maybe that supporting point should be the big picture. But again, you can even sketch this out on a piece of paper. Put a big circle. What's my headline? 3 key points. Under there, now you can expand. Now you can add slides. You can add case studies. You could have stories. But you got to have a structure first. So I really like the way this structure happens. I have spent, my goodness, I've been in meeting rooms where we have spent like 4 or 5 hours, just thinking of like, what is the one thing we want to say? So again, it's hard. But boy, once you have a message map down, especially if it's a mission critical presentation, you share it with everybody. Everybody speaks from the same playbook, and they know exactly what to say and what topics to hit.
And it forces you to get clear on the message. I find a lot of leaders, a lot of educators talk in terms of the answer. And until you get the person or the audience to care about the question, they don't care about the answers that you have. So you got to make them curious. And that's a great structure to do. The other thing that I've done a lot of work around and talked to a lot of leaders about is what are they applying from what they're reading? And a lot of people, a lot of leaders brag about, I've read 50 books, 100 books this year. More importantly, I think it's what are you applying from those books? Wouldn't it be better to read 4 or 5 books and really digest them thoroughly to apply what you read, like what Bezos does? He reads voraciously, but it's his ability to apply what he's read that makes him so much more impactful, correct?
I'm glad you brought up Jeff Bezos and his reading habit. I think that it's so underappreciated. The most intriguing communicators who I've written about or who I've met, Charles, it's exactly like you just said. They read much more than average. And they're interesting because they apply what they've read. So, Jeff Bezos, I learned through my research of writing the Bezos Blueprint that he was, I'm not even sure if voracious is the right word. I mean, he was obsessed with reading. So that even so during the summers, he would have reading clubs and reading groups for his senior leadership. And his senior leaders, who are no longer with the company, they moved on. They were the ones who told me, "Yeah, Carmine, I mean, it was tough. We were on vacation. We had to get together for these book meetings because he would assign a book every month." And he would come in with books and with articles and papers, and he was constantly studying different ideas from different fields and applying them to Amazon. I argue that if it wasn't for a book, we may not have seen Amazon's growth certainly as successfully as it is today. And I think Jeff Bezos admits this too, because he says that he learned about the Amazon Flywheel from a book that was written by Jim Collins, Good to Great. Now, at the time, Good to Great was a business book. It wasn't like this iconic, one of the best-selling business books of all time. But Jeff Bezos saw that there was this idea called a flywheel, and he said, "How would we apply it to Amazon?" And a flywheel simply means that it's a mechanical device, like in a car, and as it spins and gets torque, it goes faster and faster and faster. It builds on its own momentum. Jeff Bezos sketches it out. I wish I knew where that sketch was. I bet it's somewhere. Sketches it out. And he said, "Oh, yeah, the Amazon flywheel." Okay, well, this is why we have to keep prices low, because if we keep prices low, then we're going to attract more customers. If we attract more customers, we're going to attract more third-party sellers on this platform. So if we attract more third-party sellers, then we're going to have more customers. But it all starts with, this is why we have to keep our prices low, folks. Ah, okay, got it. Now I'm starting to see this fly, and the flywheel actually became quite a popular term in the last 20 years. Everyone I know, everyone's got a flywheel. Talk to talk to companies, talk to leaders, especially startups. Everyone's got a flywheel. And I argue, I don't think you'd be talking about a flywheel if it hadn't been for Jeff Bezos having read a book and popularizing the notion. Oh, most great leaders and great communicators have done something similar.
Well, and all this really sets up for the Gallo method, right? A framework to help leaders distill complexity down to its purest, most powerful message. Because a lot of time, leaders need to distill these ideas and pitch big ideas. So, how did studying Bezos really influence that method? And what is the biggest mistake people make when trying to simplify their message? And perhaps even unpacking this methodology as well for our listeners.
Yeah, so I called the Gallo method. Part of a big part of it is already what we talked about, which is the message map. Okay, we're going to start with the big picture that I call the log line, and then we're going to support it with 3 or 4 supporting points. Since the big picture is so important, can I tell you what the log line is? I want to talk about that because I think it'll help people understand what we mean by big picture. When I was trying to put this together, I said, how do I tell people what the big picture means? What is that? I said it's a Twitter friendly headline, like a headline you can put in Twitter. Yeah, and that worked okay, but it wasn't that descriptive. I was speaking to a screenwriter in Hollywood. Screenwriters are great storytellers. So I love talking to screenwriters and, movie folks. And he said, "Oh, Carmine, that sounds like the log line." I said, "Oh, what's a log line?" He goes, "Everyone in Hollywood knows what a log line is. When a screenwriter sells a script to a movie studio, the first thing they want to know is the log line. In one sentence, what's the movie about? It's the top of the movie poster. It's the description on Netflix. Go through your Netflix feed. There's a sentence there that describes it almost perfectly, that particular show or movie. They put a lot of work into that because you need to know, everyone wants to know in one sentence, why am I watching this presentation? Why do I want to watch this movie? Why do I want to listen to Charles and Carmine for the next hour? Why? Give me a good reason. That's the log line. And there are famous log lines. Beachgoers are terrorized by a gigantic shark that has an appetite for swimmers and boat captains. I remember that. That's a real log line. Jaws. That's a great. No one is going to read page 32 of the script unless they see the movie poster. That's why I built that into the Gallo method. You got to start with the log line. What's this movie about?
And even using analogies or metaphors to help people understand it. I know that's fairly popular with Hollywood pitches. When they were pitching Speed with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves, they said, "Well, what is this about?" And they use that analogy. Well, it's like Die Hard on a bus. Oh, got it.
Oh my gosh, isn't that interesting? Because metaphorical language is a topic that I was hoping we get to. It is such a powerful tactic that has been used for generations, certainly with great communicators. Going back to Shakespeare, my goodness, if you think about it, Juliet, when Romeo saw Juliet and he said, "It is the east and Juliet is the sun." Well, we know she's not the sun, but she must have brightened the room. She's got similar qualities. That's a metaphor. So famous writers, of course, have always known about metaphors, but see what you're doing, Charles, is that's an analogy. It's like this. The only difference between an analogy and a metaphor is like or as. But essentially an analogy starts from a metaphor, comparing two different things to show their similarities. That's a perfect example. See, now, whoever did that pitch, they may not, well, if it's a screenwriters, it's different. But most people who use metaphors or analogies don't think of themselves as storytellers, but they're really good at it. And so I say, no, you are a storyteller. That's a storytelling tactic, is what is this like? So in business, The best story, the person who's really mastered the metaphor, I'm going to argue Jeff Bezos to an extent, Warren Buffett, absolutely. Whenever I watch CNBC, almost every time I watch CNBC during the day, somebody is going to say, we like this stock. There's a moat around the company. A moat. Oh, okay. What's that? It's hard for competitors to enter the castle, to compete. They built a moat. Maybe it's an installed user base, whatever it is. They call it a moat. Yeah, that's from Warren Buffett. He first wrote about that about 20 years ago in one of his shareholder letters. He has a million of these, a million metaphors, because he understands that in order to simplify complex financial information, he has to find something familiar. So he understood this intuitively, but there's a lot of science behind it. If you want people to remember what you have to say or something that's new or abstract, find a comparison. I don't care what you call it. I don't care if you call it an analogy or a metaphor or a comparison, but find something familiar to compare it to, and that's what people will remember.
You're right. Those images stick. Entrepreneurs should always be looking for analogies and metaphors from everyday life that make their innovations feel familiar, like jobs called computers, bicycles for the mind.
We can't move away from this topic without talking about Jeff Bezos and metaphors. So, where do you think Amazon came from? Amazon. A lot of people say, oh, it's because it started with A. No, that was a side benefit. Jeff Bezos was trying to find a comparison, a metaphor. Earth's biggest selection of books, at the time it was only books, but Earth's biggest selection of books, Earth's biggest river is the Amazon. Amazon. Oh, and it starts with A. Let's try that. He had gone through a bunch of other names. Some of those names are still on the internet today. If you type in relentless.com, I learned this too in my research, it redirects you to Amazon. So relentless, not as catchy. Amazon, great. So he went on to create that flywheel, like I told you about. The flywheel is a metaphor. People understand it intuitively, and now everybody just kind of talks about it like, oh yeah, of course, the flywheel. That's a metaphor. It started as a metaphor. So again, think about those comparisons or analogies that are going to stick. Not all of them do. Many are cliche. And if they're too cliche, people will ignore them anyway. But keep working at it. Try to come up with a unique comparison or analogy. And that's what people will remember from your communication.
Let's shift gears and talk about senses because communication just isn't about what people hear, it's about what they see, feel, and remember. And visuals and videos can be powerful, but they're either often overused or underused. What is your approach to using visuals strategically to really connect emotionally with the audience instead of have it just as a decoration, something that's not needed, that distracts away from the message?
Okay, this is why, Charles, I am still a big proponent of PowerPoint and slides as a visual complement to your story. So everything we've been talking about this far has had nothing to do with slides. It's about the story, right? The story comes first, the message, the metaphors. How am I going to put all these ideas together into a package? But it's very well established in the neuroscience literature, and you know this, that we process pictures much more powerfully and effectively than we do words alone. That's why, please do not deliver another presentation with nothing but text on the slides. That's not how your audience wants to receive the information. And they can't multitask. We know this now over the last several years of scientific research. There's no such thing as multitasking. The brain stops and goes from one to another task, but it doesn't multitask. So it can't listen to you and read 100 words on your slide at the same time. But what it loves is listening to you, a speaker, and having an image in the background that complements the message. Oh, now we're talking. And then of course, the next challenge people will ask is, oh, but Carmine, people expect the numbers, they expect the data, they expect the pie charts. Okay. Well, I'm not asking you to blow up your PowerPoint completely, but I am asking you to identify the most important parts, maybe the most important data point, and create a story and then a visual around that particular image, topic, or data point. But don't just fill a slide full of data, because that's actually quite boring. And another thing we've learned in cognitive science is the brain does not pay attention to boring things. Charles, I mean, come on. If there's one thing you take away from today, the brain does not pay attention to boring things. Text on a slide is boring, but it loves a visual.
Well, and look at the TED stage, right? Bono and Amanda Palmer stepped on the TED stage. They didn't just speak, they created a multi-sensory experience. Business leaders can learn from people talking on the TED stage that hit it out of the park.
You won't even see a bullet point on a TED Talk. I challenge you. Like on a national TED Talk, go to TED.com, send me an email, send me the link where you actually saw bullet points on the slide. You're not going to find them, because but that's coached. I've learned when I wrote the TED Talk book that it's coached. There are a lot of people, a lot of scientists who come in and they want to deliver just their normal PowerPoint. And the TED organizers say, no, because that's boring. And so what happens is they typically take that material and convert it into visuals and animations. There's still data, there's still words on the slides, but but no list of just bullet points. Really interesting that you picked that out.
Well, and as AI becomes more capable, and it's really the buzzword for the last few years now, the real question is what makes us irreplaceable? So let's talk about the human edge, because if AI can write emails, analyze data, even hold a conversation, what human communication skills will always give us an edge, and how can we start to sharpen them today?
Oh, well, we just mentioned one. You talked about the power of books and reading. Absolutely. That'll help you stand out. Read something different, read something new, and start applying it to your field, which AI has a hard time doing because that takes imagination. So that's one way of standing out. But this is a challenge, and I'm thinking about this constantly. How do we stand out in the age of AI? So far, what I'm seeing, because I've actually been asked to be on some panels where we test different AI tools. What I'm seeing is there's no personality, there's no authenticity here, there's no human emotion. They're very good at summarizing. They're really good at outlining, and just like when we were talking about the Gallo message map, that's hard for people. It's hard for people to create an outline. So if you use something like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, those tools are actually very, very good at taking a lot of information and giving you a structure. But there's no personality. So yes, use it as a complement. Just like PowerPoint is a tool, PowerPoint's a complement. But add your personality, which is why we got back to stories. AI cannot make up a story. Well, it can make up a lot of things, and it does. Be careful with the quotes you use. I wrote a whole article on that. Famous quotes, not so famous when you ask AI. It's like
Right.
Winston Churchill really said that. I don't recall ever reading that. Sure enough, did Winston Churchill really say that? Can you point me to a link? It'll say it's something he might have said based on other things that, it's like, oh my gosh. Okay, so AI's got a lot of troubles. But Charles, I'm going in a lot of different directions because I'm excited about this topic. In everything I've surveyed or analyzed, there's no personality. No personality. So you have to be the one to bring your own unique story. Everyone has a unique story, a unique voice, a unique perspective. Use it as a compliment, use it to help you organize or structure or summarize. That's fine. But you're the storyteller, and it's your unique voice that has to stand out.
I want to cover one more topic that I know you talk about as well, though, before we end. I know our time's getting short, and that's with Leonardo da Vinci. Because talking about creativity with leaders, right? He saw patterns across science, art, engineering. In today's hyper specialized world, how can professionals tap into that same cross disciplinary mindset to really fuel their creativity? Because I see that being less and less the case as we become more specialized in what we know.
So Leonardo, I read Walter Isaacson's amazing book on Leonardo da Vinci. Ken Burns has come out with a wonderful special on Leonardo. And what was his call to fame was the fact that he wasn't just a painter, but he understood the human body. He understood science and medicine, at the time, and physics, and the way birds fly, and the way things move. And engineering. He sketched out like the first helicopter, long before we had the technology to do so. So he was thinking about all these things and he brought them together, which apparently I heard in the Ken Burns special, he was the life of the party. I didn't know that because I have this picture of Leonardo. He's older. He's got the white hair.
Right.
He kind of looks like a hermit to me, or just like an introvert painting for years on end. No, he was the life of the party. People loved young Leonardo because he was so interesting. I haven't written about that yet. I want to. I've got to watch the special again. But that's what makes good communicators interesting too. It helps you stand out from AI. Some of your listeners are going to know who this is. There's a guy named Brandel Chambly, who is one of the top golf sports commentators. And I interviewed him once because I sent him an email. I said, I love listening to you because you're not just talking about the scores and who posted what score. You're kind of like a Da Vinci of writing. You bring in physics, the physics of the golf swing. You bring in history. Like in every conversation he has about a golfer, it's physics, it's history, it's stories, it's anecdotes. It's really fascinating. And people, at least in the golf world, really enjoy or listen to this person's commentary. And I think you can find this in almost any sport. Really good commentary, especially the color commentary. They bring in all these different elements. I read this book once that kind of reminds me of what this quarterback just did. Oh, okay. Tell me about that. So they bring in history or physics, the physics of the ball flight, or science. They make it interesting. That's what I mean by you got to have a little Leonardo in you. He was the life of the party because he was able to speak about a number of different topics and bring them all together, and that made him interesting. Again, we're talking about how to stand out in the age of AI. AI doesn't have that imagination quite yet. We have a few more years to stand out, Charles.
I'm glad we have a little more time, Carmine. That's good to hear. That's encouraging. And you're right. When I read Walter Isaacson's book, it's about exposing yourself to different disciplines, right? Read widely, attend events outside your field. The best innovations I found come from cross-pollination. When a marketer understands psychology or a coder studies storytelling, because new insights emerge and creativity really lives at those edges.
Cross-pollination. That's exactly it. I like that term. Yeah, but that's exactly it. So that not only makes you a better innovator, but it also, in my opinion, makes you a more interesting communicator.
Well, thank you so much. So, what did we learn today? Great communication isn't about dazzling with data or speaking in bullet points. It's about anchoring your message in emotion, shaping it with a story, and delivering it with clarity and reinforcing it with conviction. Because whether you're building a company, giving a keynote, or leading a Monday morning meeting, your voice is the vehicle for change. And as our esteemed guest reminds us, ideas are the currency of the 21st century. So, thank you so much, Carmine, for joining me today. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you and learn more about your work.
Well, if you can remember a good Italian name like Carmine Gallo, easy to find me. You can find me on the internet, carminegallo.com, or look me up on LinkedIn. I think I'm easy to find. I'm the only Carmine, I'm pretty sure, in California. There aren't many. So look up Carmine Gallo on LinkedIn, author, California. I live in Northern Cal, so you'll be able to find me. Connect with me on LinkedIn or visit my website.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Carmine, for joining me. And thank all of you. Here's your challenge. Distill your message, speak from the heart, and deliver it like your words can change the world, because they can. And thanks for tuning in today for the Good Leadership Podcast. If this episode has resonated with you, share it with a friend or colleague, and always keep leading with your voice. I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.